Hi, I'm Terrence Kommal. Today I'd like to share with you my thoughts on a very somber discussion and probably the hardest discussion that I've ever had to do on a recording. My father died this week. He passed on Monday, amazingly unrelated to the COVID pandemic, but died of significant healthcare conditions, and he progressively worsened over the last few months. And try as much as we could, try as much as I could, as a son, as a clinician, as a healthcare professional, there was very little we could do to save him at the end. We did everything possible. I consulted far and wide, from the US to India to Europe, a range of colleagues in South Africa, and every possible resource I had access to. But this exposed a far more deeper reality. Besides me desperately missing my father and wishing he was here with me right now, is three important things that I want you and I to ponder on for a moment. The first is the fragility of life. Second, the limitation of time. And third, your life's legacy. Because you see, when my father went to ICU in the last time, his fourth in 3 months, he didn't know it was his last visit. We rushed him to a casualty and he knew he was going to ICU to be stabilized. And so did I. But he had no time to review his legacy. He had no time to review what people thought of him. But I can assure you, after he passed on, and many of you viewing this may be part of that, is he had students and friends and family dating back to the early 80s and the late 70s who could recall amazing experiences with him. Some called him a community worker, others called him a community activist, some called him a comrade, others saw him as a teacher, some as a friend, and I as my father. My kids as their grandfather, my mom as her husband. But you couldn't change the legacy at this late stage, and I think it's all the more important right now in the COVID pandemic that's across the world, that God and nature, to a large extent, has forced us to sit back and ponder for a moment on what is actually important to us. Because as much as I served on a range of committees around the country on the Business South Africa initiatives in YPO and other business circles, professional circles, locally and internationally, I was busy helping South Africa and Africa to some extent, as well as the world, from a policy and direct action perspective, to prepare for a pandemic to protect their families, your families. Little did I know that my father was dying in parallel to that process. Little did I know that I could and should have focused more on the fragility of life, but my focus was also on focusing on the fragility of everyone else's life that was affected by this global pandemic. Whilst many parts of the world have now resumed some level of work, there is no normalcy. And I think the old normal failed us. The old normal we had failed us because we created that normal. We forgot that we have a finite time. We have a finite time with our families, with our friends, with our peers. We have a finite time to create value and happiness for our family, for people we care about, and people we may not really care about directly or indirectly, but are material to what we do, what many call non-shareholding stakeholders. It's the communities, it's the people of our countries, our continents, and our world that we need to assist, who have far less than we do. If we drive 10 kilometers in any direction from any of the major cities or towns that we live in, there's abject poverty. People struggle to get the basics that they need every day, from good, clean running water, sanitation, housing, protection from the extreme cold that we're experiencing in South Africa. And we worry about petty matters. My father died this week. And that reminds me again of how little time we have to create value for everyone. Because when we talk about legacy, legacy is all about what people say, not just when you're not in the room, but like in the case of my own dad, when you're never here again, when you're gone permanently. When people have messaged me from all across the world, some directly and many indirectly touched by him in his life, they speak of the good things that he did, how he impacted their lives, how he assisted students, how he became their friends, how he became their guide, how he assisted many people secure scholarships, secure their careers, their training, their professions. And that to me is heartwarming. because it reminds me to reflect, and I want you to share that moment as we ponder. What will be our legacy if we die tomorrow? What will people think? And it's not about what people will say. It's the impact you leave behind, because that impact speaks far louder than just what people say. But a lot of their opinions are guided by our very direct actions. So sit back for a moment with me as we ponder, because I'm in this time of mourning, I'm in this time of deep reflection with my family, and a very painful time of separation, but also acknowledging that Dad is gone forever. In this COVID world, we're all at risk, my family included. Because during his visitations, we were limited, even as a doctor. I was allowed maybe once a week, and at sometimes twice a week, to see my dad in a medically induced coma, ventilated in an ICU. I didn't ask for more privileges because I knew the risks it created to everyone. Because every time an unknown person enters a hospital, it is unknown what they carry, me included. As much as we try to socially distance and wear masks, and also often we've had that with friends and family visiting in the last few days, we maintained strict social distancing. Slowly the masks moves from proper masks to mouth warmers to chin warmers. The reality is that is both selfish and poorly informed. Because the intention of the mask is not just to limit what you can spread, but it's also what you can attract as an individual. Because as I said many months ago, and so does the WHO right now, the virus, because of its nature, can to a fair extent and a fair period remain airborne. So it does not mean that the fact that someone hasn't coughed at you, sneezed at you, or you haven't touched a surface that hasn't been sanitized, that you won't contract the virus. It's unknown how we will contract it or can contract it. But what we do know is wearing a mask makes a significant impact, as well as maintaining proper social distancing and limiting our exposure to anyone else outside of our immediate families. These risks are there. Every day, people around the world are contracting the virus and becoming seriously ill, many dying due to complications. My dad, again, did not die from COVID, but the impact it had on our family will be lasting. And the reminder it's brought for us that I share with you today is, in a COVID world and beyond, we need to be conscientious of the fragility of life, the fragility of we have a very finite time with the people that we care about, the people that we share our lives with, consciously and unconsciously. But it also reminds us to every day ponder what is truly valuable to me. It helps me ponder what is truly valuable to me, what is truly important, what is truly valuable to you as a family unit, as a community, as a society, and what is valuable to us as a world. Because the day we're born is the day the clock starts. But the quality of life that we live is dictated by us, by our conscious decisions. And we've been reminded by this infection, by this COVID world, by this COVID pandemic and the crisis, as it still continues to explode internationally and at home. We need to act with a conscience. We need to act for ourselves. We need to act for our families. We need to act for our communities. Because we will be judged by the decisions we make. And we will continue to be judged long after we're gone, very much like my father is judged. And my father has left a legacy that many remain as positive. So I appeal to you, do the necessary precautions. Make sure you limit your travels. Make sure you limit your social interactions. Take the proper precautions as advised by the governments and international organizations. But most importantly, let's remind ourselves that life is extremely fragile. Our time on earth is also extremely limited and finite. And let's reflect together on what will be our legacy when we're gone. Very much like my father left behind. Stay well, stay safe, and stay blessed.